Hey everyone, I'm Steve with South of Sanity Farms, and today we're going to make our morning fresh goat milk soap using all organic oils and butters, pure essential oils, and then natural clays. Since we are working with lye, there are a few things that we need to do to be ready for safety measures, and one is to have a good pair of eye protection and some gloves. Let's get these on and we'll get started. So step one in the process is we set out our frozen goat milk. And before we get to this point, we milk our goats every day, and so we take their raw milk and we pour it in these little silicone trays where we'll put it in the freezer, and when it's done, we'll weigh it out at that time and we'll cut it into blocks, put it in bags, and then put it back in the deep freeze to where we'll just let it be there until we're ready to use it. So that's what I've done so far, is just pulled out a bag, and I've got my pre-weighed frozen goat milk in a bowl ready to go. Step two of our process is to measure out our oils. In today's recipe, what we're going to be using are organic oils of sustainable palm, coconut, olive, castor bean, sweet almond, and avocado oils. Everything that we do when we're putting this recipe together is all done by weight, not volume. So we have just a regular kitchen scale here, and we'll just weigh everything out and we'll put it in this pot. Yeah, and for us, we're not on a huge scale where we're producing just tens of thousands of bars a year, but we are on a scale large enough that we need stuff more than just a gallon at a time. So we order everything in bulk as much as we can. And so we get our coconut oil. It actually comes in 44-pound blocks that we'll transfer into 5-gallon buckets when we open one to use. And the same with the palm oil. It comes in a 33-pound box, and we normally order about probably about 1,000 pounds to 1,500 pounds at a time, and we normally have to do that about twice a year. So this is our organic coconut oil, so I'll go ahead and put that in first. So in the pot we have our coconut oil, palm oil, and our olive oil already in here. And here's the last three oils of the castor, sweet almond, and avocado oil. So step three is now it's time to melt the oils. And as we've already got them in the pot on a hot plate, so we'll just kind of stir it gradually, and then some of these bigger chunks of the coconut oil and the palm oil, I'll just kind of periodically come through and break them up so they'll melt a little quicker. And then normally I get this oil up to about 120 degrees. I know some people keep it less than that. This is what works for us, and I've never had an issue getting the oil up to that high for a cold process batch. Step four is to measure out our lye. Since this is a bar soap recipe, we're going to be using sodium hydroxide. If it were a liquid soap recipe, we would use potassium hydroxide. And we get these little micro beads. They're easy to weigh out and measure, and this will be what helps convert the fats in the oils and the milk into soap. And this is the part where, would be where these safety gloves and goggles come in handy. Step five is to mix our lye into our frozen milk. And this is the part that, I've had some splash on me before, and so it's just one of those things that's very important to wear your gloves and goggles at all times, but especially during this part. And I always take the lye and put it over the milk. And so what I'll do is, if, like, this is 33 ounces roughly of lye, and I'll put maybe like a third of it, kind of sprinkle it around. And then for the first part, I just kind of shake the bowl to get it going, and it'll start to melt it down pretty quick. And eventually I'll grab this spoon right here and start to kind of toss it a little bit to get it in there. You want to kind of shake it a little bit and continually to stir it so that like some of that lye doesn't like settle into like a crevice between the two or between frozen pieces of milk, and then you'll get like this orange clump of where it's actually like kind of burning the milk. You know, and as you can see, I mean, just after 20 seconds or so, you can already see it's melting. You know, I've seen some people where they put this in an ice bath. We've just never had an issue with it. As far as if we're starting from frozen milk, we just do it this way, and you know, it takes a little bit of time for it to fully melt, but we've never had any problems as far as maintaining the heat. And like I said, with the oils, they'll get up to around 120 degrees. With the milk, I mean, honestly, I've had it as high as 120 itself, but generally like around 80 degrees. You know, it's one of those things, like I wouldn't stress a whole lot about it. You know, just enjoy the process, and you know, it's pretty forgiving. It's not as rigid, I guess, as some people make it out to be, at least in my experience. And we've been making soap now for, I guess, 7 or 8 years. We probably make about, I don't know, 6, maybe 7,000 bars a year. So not like a whole lot, but you know, more than just your average 10 or 20 bars. And so now I'll add a little bit more lye in there. And also what I'll do here in just a minute, as soon as I stir this lye in, is I'll actually go back over to my pot that's right here behind me and check the oils kind of in between while I'm stirring this. And then as you can see, the oils are pretty much done. There's one little piece of palm oil floating, but I'm going to go ahead and cut off the eye because that's going to melt. It's already up to what it needs to be. Yeah, and so now that the oils are melted, I'm going to go ahead and take it off the heat and set it on this little trivet. And we'll let it sit there, and it'll cool down a few degrees while we're finishing the milk. You know, now, and then since the oils are done, we'll just come back to the lye. I'm going to dump the last little bit of it in there, and we'll continue to stir it. And this process normally takes about, it'll probably take another 10 or 15 minutes for it to fully melt. And then we'll let it sit for a little bit while the oils cool down just a few degrees so that they're a little closer in temperature. You know, I've experimented with this over the years because a lot of people say like they really need to be within like a 10-degree window of each other. And I do find that they trace faster the closer they are together. But just for experimental purposes, one time when we first started making soap, the milk itself got up to about 140 degrees. You know, and it was a small batch, and again, these were the experimental batches that we were doing, and we still didn't have any issue with it. You know, so again, you know, enjoy the process and don't stress out about it too much. I mean, you know, yes, you can ruin a batch of soap, but it's not as easy to do, at least as some people make it out to be. So if you're off a few degrees, you know, I wouldn't stress about it too much. So while we're gonna wait on our oils to cool down a few degrees and for our milk to finish melting in with the lye, we're gonna move on to step 6, which is measure out the essential oils and the natural clay that we use for this batch. Yeah, and for this batch, it's lavender, peppermint, rosemary, and eucalyptus essential oils. And for anyone that buys essential oils, you know this is where the money is in the materials for this soap. So we're going to do one last temperature check just to make sure where it needs to be. So the milk, we're sitting at about 85, and the oils are about 125. So a few degrees higher than normal, but it's going to be perfectly fine to do that. So now we're going to move on to step 8. No, we're going to move on to step 7, right? Edit. So now we're going to move on to step 7, which is blend our mixture. So what we're going to do is we actually pour our milk and lye solution into the melted oils. And as you can see, like they start to mix together pretty quick. And once that I see that at least the look of it is uniform and it's starting to thicken, then I'll add the essential oils and the clay to it and finish blending it until it comes to a trace. And I like to multitask on this point, so I'll mix with my left hand with the lye and the oils and the milk, and then in my right hand I'll keep that clay and the essential oils mixed. And so now if you can see, like, it's not to trace yet, but it's definitely thicker, you know, and so get it just a little bit thicker. And so now for me, this is a good time to go ahead and add the essential oil. Since I'm not doing anything fancy with this one as far as swirls or any decorative stuff, we're just going for good, natural, organic soap. So I'm going to take the essential oil and the clays. I'm just going to pour the whole thing in. And then we'll go ahead and blend some more until we come to trace. All right, so now, can you see that on camera, where when I drag it across, see how it leaves kind of ridges on there? So it's kind of sitting on the surface, so that means we've got it mixed well, it's traced, so now, set that off. Yeah, and so now that our soap is traced, we're gonna move on to the final step, which is step 8, to pour it into our molds. Yeah, and these batches, we make them in, they make 64 bars at a time. So we have 4 molds, which each will give us 16 bars of soap that are between 4.5 and 5 ounces each. And you can see as these last 2, I'm kind of pouring it slow for the camera, but you can see how it's already thickening up in the pot compared to the first pour. It's the first time I made soap in front of a camera. It's a little difficult, more difficult than I thought it would be. And so now I'm gonna kind of tap these down, then I'll take the leftover and just fill up whichever one wasn't all the way full. And now that we've got it poured and they're fairly even, I'm just going to go through just for a little swirl on top. All right, and there you have it. That's pretty much it. You know, the last thing I'm going to do is put these little lids on the boxes, and we'll let them sit in here for 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer, and I'll come back tomorrow and we'll cut them into bars where we'll put them on the curing rack where they'll sit for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then from there they'll be ready to go. So here we are the next day. It was just too pretty to be inside today, so we're gonna finish this batch up outside. So what we'll do is we're just gonna take these lids off, and I'm gonna pull out the loaves. Yeah, and so what we're gonna do to get these on the curing rack is I'm just gonna pop them out of these silicone molds. And these have been like a huge time and money saver for me. I bought these probably 5 or 6 years ago, and they work great. They release the soap real nice. And You know, they've just been a good investment. You know, and then so what I do is like these little wings right there, I'm just going to take a knife and just shave those off on both sides. And then I'll put it in the soap cutter. And so this one, it'll cut them, well this loaf will actually make 16 bars. So I'm going to cut off the first 10, then I'll slide it and cut the last 6 off. And these strings are set up to where they're 1 inch and they're 1 1/16 of an inch. And anyway, the soap labels are made to fit these bars. So then so this will be the first 10. And then we'll just take them, and these little bread trays I bought online years ago as well. And they are the perfect size for the batches of soap that I make. It's easy for me to get 64 bars on there. Actually, I said that wrong. I said this would cut 10 and 6, but it's actually 11 and 5. So there is the first of 4. And I saved these ends because for our Airbnbs, we actually cut these into thirds and make little sample size soaps out of those. So they get used up, nothing gets wasted. And so you can just see how they just slide right out, very easy. And I'll just repeat the process again. I'll take my knife, trim off the edge. This little soap cutter's been great. When I first got started, I guess like everybody, we started off small and had like a little homemade rig that I made where I would just take a kitchen knife and just cut it 1 bar at a time, which worked, but it was really hard to get any kind of consistency doing it that way. You know, so this works out really well. And I've had this soap cutter for probably I guess 5 or 6 years as well, and it's held up pretty good. We break a string from time to time, but they're very easy and inexpensive to replace. So there you have it. We hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the notifications so you can catch our next video, which is where I'm going to share some tips and advice to help you if you're interested in starting your own soap making business. So hopefully we'll catch you next time.